And to help us understand and maybe find some closure, I've asked one of our regular contributors, Lori Wondra, to be with us. And she's in studio. She's an intuitive. Maybe make some sense of it all. Hi there, Lori. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Rashini. Thank you for inviting me in today.
My guess is this also, even though this is work that you do, it struck you also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's never easy when we lose a loved one, especially when it's a tragedy and an unexpected loss. And it's probably one of the top questions I get with people that come to see me is, where did my loved one go? What happened? Are they okay? And I just want to share that when we leave this plane or this dimension, we are surrounded by love. We are surrounded by our loved ones. We are ushered into the other realms. And so we have the sense of peace and love. And I always find it's more difficult for us here on earth because we don't have all the answers. There's no justification. There's no reason. There's no logic behind some of these events. And many times our loved ones can be done here, or their mission is to continue here, but in a different energy. And in those loved ones, we maybe don't understand what that means. How do they continue here? But they're still with us. They're still working from beyond. They're still delivering the messages of love and peace. And there's a greater purpose. I like to believe that there's a greater purpose in bringing our community and the spiritual community together to rise into that place of love, but also awareness.
So there are a couple different things going on as I can imagine. So first of all, this happens and there's that great loss, that void of the loved one not being there. So whatever connection we have to them, maybe we saw them one day, maybe we know them personally, maybe we just read about them. And there's just that sense of mourning for the people who do love them. What actually happens to those people? I mean, whether people have a faith themselves or, a belief in a higher being or not, what actually happens to the bodies and the souls of the people, these three people who did die?
So the bodies, we live in a physical dimension, so our bodies are what we connect with on this plane, but we have heart connection, and that's soul. And so when we leave our physical bodies, we continue on. And I know some people don't believe in reincarnation or traversing the universe, but our souls continue. We have greater purpose and greater capacity than what we just experience in this plane. And that's a hard thing to think about when you lose a loved one, but they are continuing in the space of the heavens, in the other dimensions, in the other realms. They continue. They continue in that place of peace and love, and they have a mission and a purpose. So they're free. And one of the things I wanted to touch on today is sometimes we get so wrapped up in the tragedy and the awfulness and the pain that we forget that our loved ones are at peace. And I want to just deliver that message that when they leave here, they don't carry the tragedy and the pain and the awfulness of the event. They're much more in that place of peace and love.
Well, yeah, that's a really nice message to hear from you. I'm also thinking about some of the lessons. In the past, I've talked with people about celebrity deaths. I think about princes.
Yes.
And that was we still mourn that. But out of that has come major discussions about dying without a will, about painkiller addiction, things like that. So there is talk about furthering other issues and getting more educated and aware about other issues when these sort of tragic losses happen.
That's absolutely the truth. People still are very connected to Prince and his life, and what he still continues to do in the afterlife is to connect with us. But it is to have us experience that place of contrast. And these are contrast events. They're unexpected events that toss us suddenly into something that's uncomfortable. It's not right. It needs to change. And we experience change through contrast. Otherwise, we continue to just go through status quo. So the universe has a way of delivering episodes and events to us that create contrast in order for us to be aware, to move in that direction. And these events are big events. It's not just one or two people. It affects a lot of people around the globe, especially when it's tragic like this. And so it's creating a bigger movement. And when you have someone in the spiritual world, let's say Justine in the spiritual world, and is such a bright shining light, it's that message is going to continue to pull people together in a different way, in an unexpected way, to drive change for all of us.
I think about Justine in her memorial that's coming up on Friday, and not only will her fiancé Don be there, but her father John is coming from Australia to be here, and other friends. So, I mean, it's bringing people globally to Minneapolis, to the shores of Lake Harriet, to remember, you know, this woman whose life was, yes, ended so early and tragically. And it does, unfortunately, these tragedies do bring certain issues and discussions to the forefront that we might not otherwise have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not just local. This is impacting people on the levels of wanting to discuss spirituality, wanting to discuss what happens when we leave here, wanting to discuss policies and practices and laws and all those types of things. And even in the explosion, those events will probably bring about some policies or practices or safety mechanisms in that space. And with Prince's death, bringing across legislature and other things in prescription writing and opiates and those types of things. So there's always a catalyst, and they can be small and they can be big. And these events have been big.
I'm talking with Lori Wondra. She's an intuitive. If you have any questions for her, give us a text, 81807. We may even have time for a quick call, 651-989-9226 or 866-989-9226. We do have some texts coming in, Lori. One person says, I'll agree, her message is good, but what can she possibly provide as proof as this better afterlife? It's all speculation.
And that's a valid point. It is. Some people say it's faith, it's trust. It is the gift I have is being able to connect with people that have crossed over and to sense that they're not in this place of tragic, or they're not in this place of unrest. There's an understanding. And so there isn't a scientific proof. That's our mind wanting to have the scientific nugget of proof. But it's more of that faith and hope and love. And I guess my gift that I've had since a small child is being able to connect with those loved ones that have crossed over.
All right. Well, a couple other things that I want you to talk about are those of us left behind, those of us here. Yes. And, you know, even if we have no connection whatsoever, even seeing and reading about and listening to the tragic headlines and the sad stories, even if we're not moved by that, perhaps in our own lives, this will happen to us. We'll have that sudden loss. We'll have that unexpected tragic event. What can we do to move on, to have a healthy next step?
There's the individual things, and then there's the community things. And the individual things are to take care of yourself. So make sure that you have rest, that you have people around you that are supporting you. If you need quiet time, take that quiet time. If you need to be with people to support you, be with people. It's really to listen to that inner voice that you have as to what you need. And sometimes during events like this, we become numb in that, and we don't know what we need. And that's where really having loved ones around you that can care or take care or to guide. But at a larger point, the community is to let's hold it in a place of love and light, and put your energy into good action to make some changes, and from a loving place, not from a place of hatred or anger, but from a place of love and peace. But it is about change, and how do we change some of those things that need to be changed?
You know, and I'm thinking about the Wetterlings right now. That's an example in Minnesota that goes back to 1989. And, you know, nearly every year there was something in their story, definitely a major story every decade since. And there was finally some closure this past year that happened in that story. And what an example of just one of the worst tragedies ever for our state, and how much good came out of that. There's no explanation as to why that had to happen to them.
Right.
But so many layers of good that came out of it.
So many layers. I mean, there were so many laws changes and the Amber Alert, those things that got put in place as a result of this that would not have shifted, or we would not have those things in place. And it's unfortunate we need those things, but we need those things. And without an event, a catalyst event, oftentimes things don't change. So
I'm talking with Lori Wondra. She is an intuitive, and we're talking about how to maybe look at these tragic events of the past couple months of the summer. And there will be more, unfortunately, and they are the ones that get more space in the papers, more attention in radio and TV than even the good news. And so how do we deal with them? How do we make sense of them? If you have any final thoughts, give us a text, 81807. Here's a great question for you, Lori. This listener says, can you speak to situations of family alienation while living?
Oh, interesting. And honestly, I do see that. People come to see me about with the question, will their families reunite when they go through alienation? And usually it's one person that's in that heart space that wants to connect, and there is one that is not, or it's family members that are not. And you need to have two active hearts that are in that heart space to make a connection. So if you happen to be the one that's in the heart space that's wanting to make connection, but the family is not, just keep yourself in the place of love. Don't go to the levels of hatred and anger and drama and those types of things. Send love. Stay in that place. And over time, there's a shift in the energy. If you are fighting anger with anger, it's going to create that, or it's going to maintain that area of conflict. But if you're doing your battle with love, there's a shift in the energy field.
I want to remind people of some of the memorials coming up. Today, there is a service at middle school, the lower and middle school chapel. That's at 6 p.m. for John Carlson. The family will also receive visitors from 4 to 6 p.m. ahead of that 6 p.m. service. There's no information yet on the service for Ruth Berg. And then on Friday at Lake Harriet, 6 p.m. through about 10 p.m., because there are different events going on for Justine Damon. Her family, locally and from Australia, will be remembering her starting at 6 o'clock. Gathering time for music, prayer, and fellowship. Then at 6:50, Native American spiritual burning of sage. At 7 o'clock, a memorial service. And then 8:30 to 10 p.m., a silent walk around Lake Harriet. The public is invited, and I'm sure you can attend any or all of those parts of that memorial on Friday. And I know all of the different media outlets are covering that. WCCO Radio is covering those events too, and they are on our website, WCCOradio.com. So feel free to stay tuned to us to keep up on that information, but I wanted to get that out there. Lori Wondra, thank you for giving us some insight. Sometime, as I think my listeners know, we don't always have to be talking about the hard news aspect of things, but sometimes going into the emotional and the spiritual maybe gives us an insight to start the healing and figure out some answers for ourselves.
To be at peace. Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
And people can find out, maybe reach out directly to you.
Yourlifecore.com.
All right.